Okay, so I made a tier list recently for season 20 Legends, and I made that list before the balance changes were even out because I actually didn't know that they were gonna do buffs and nerfs along with the perks. So that tier list honestly ended up being pretty bad, I can't lie. So now that season 20 has been out and I have played way more than a normal person should, I'm gonna try to make a more accurate tier list for ranked, and you'll get a general idea of which legends you should probably play if you want to get a high rank. I'll try to be a little fast with this and be more accurate this time. So starting with Ashe, I'm gonna give B because I think she's not bad, to be honest. If you pair her with like Mad Maggie, there's some really good synergy there, but I think her usefulness is still about the same as it was before the perks came out. She's just slightly better, but overall, not bad. Ballistic, I am going to go with B as well. I think his usefulness is about the same as Maggie, but if you're a really aggressive team, I think he's also pretty solid. I played him a lot on Olympus. For some reason, Ballistic feels really good on Olympus. So if you're a team that just likes running at everything you see, Ballistic's honestly not bad. Bangalore still S tier. She didn't get nerfed at all, and her perks just made her even better. And she was S tier in the last season, so no reason for her to move now. Bloodhound is A or S, and I feel the perks that Blood got are actually pretty good. I'm probably going to put Bloodhound in S tier, to be honest, just because now that you can't use Digis on SMGs, Bloodhound is really the only consistent thing in the game that can counter Bangalore Smoke. Not to mention the Recon class passive is just really good in general. So this is somewhere I was definitely off on my last tier list. I gave Bloodhound B, but I think Blood is definitely S tier. Now, Catalyst is another person that I was very off on, I would say. I put Catalyst in S tier in my last video. I think right now she's at best probably B. She's still very useful for what she does, but her nerfs were very hard for this season. She probably got nerfed the hardest out of everyone in season 20. And basically, her perks are just making her a like worse unnerved version of herself. Now, call me crazy, but I think Catalyst is probably the worst controller legend in the game now, to be honest. Honestly, I think unfortunate for the Catalyst mains, but I do think she is still useful. Like, you're not throwing if you play her. They just took away a lot of her power in Season 20. Moving on to Caustic, another person I was wrong on. I think Caustic right now is A to S tier, purely because of how big his ult is now. It's so hard to avoid in end games. If you've been playing ranked at all this season too, you see how often you get third partied. It is way more than normal. And Caustic is probably one of the best legends in the game in terms of anti third party. So if you're playing ranked, very useful legend right now. Conduit, I'm going to give S just because she got nerfed slightly, but she still is free shield in fights. And it feels like if you don't have a Conduit yourself, you're always at a disadvantage. Crypto, they ended up changing him. Originally, he was supposed to be released with a 50% bigger EMP, but they ended up toning it down to 25%. So, not as useful as I thought he would end up being. So, I'm probably going to give him B tier because I think in terms of the recon class, Bloodhound is still probably your best option. But Crypto does have usefulness. It just doesn't feel like he really has use in rank. Fuse, I am also going to go in B. And purely because I think Fuse is map dependent. On a map like World's Edge, Fuse would be S tier. But on maps like Stormpoint, the map is too big with too much cover in giant open areas to the point where your knuckle is going to really not hit anyone a majority of the time. It's kind of the same with the ultimate. With how vertical the map is, it's normally very easy to get out of Fuse's ring of fire. So in general, I would say Fuse is B tier. But I would also say his tier could move depending on what map you're on. Moving on to Gibby, another B tier. Unfortunately, I'm doing a lot of B tiers, and I think Gibby is actually really good right now. The reason why I'm putting him lower is because Mad Maggie is very prevalent right now in Season 20, especially in Ranked. And Mad Maggie is kind of a hard counter to Gibby. So when the legend has a hard counter in the meta, it's hard to really justify them going any higher. But Gibby at its core has a very strong kit, especially with the perk making the bubble last longer. If Mad Maggie was out of meta, then I definitely think you would put Gibby higher. Moving on to Horizon, I'm giving A because the verticality of her tactical is still absolutely insane, and she still has a passive that is better than half the ultimates in the game. But I don't think she's like a must-have legend right now, so I don't really want to give her S tier, but definitely still a solid legend. Like, you're not throwing if you're running Horizon. The downside of her in season 20 is she got horrible perks compared to everyone else because I think Respawn didn't want to make her stronger. Because if base Horizon is strong, then why do you need strong perks, you know? Lifeline, I am going to give A purely because the 10% revive is really nice and the single game drop is also a big playmaker. If you get a wingman out of your lifeline game drop, you're basically at a severe advantage in every fight you get into just because of how broken the wingman is. And lifeline just gives you a guaranteed chance to have a roll out of care package gun. So automatically to me, that's a good thing. And she's a support legend. And support legends are very huge with the way ranked is being played out currently. Moving on to Loba, I am going to go A tier as well. That's because I actually think she's pretty solid in terms of off angling and getting out of fights. If you're someone who hasn't played ranked much this season, let me tell you, I have already played ranked almost 70 hours and it's not even been out a week yet. So I am on some no life hours in ranked. And almost every single fight you get into, you will get thirded, fourth partied, fifth partied almost immediately. So having a support character who also has mobility at the same time alone is A tier. You'll be using that bracelet very often just to get out of fights to go revive your team. And I feel like her perks were pretty good. So Loba in A tier I think is very fitting. Maggie, I am gonna go A tier as well. I feel like her buff was actually really good even if you ignore what perks she got. So if you don't know, Maggie's ball will no longer explode immediately if it hits a door, and it will not explode if it hits one person. So now the ball can hit multiple people before it explodes, and I think that's a giant change even ignoring the perk. But if we want to talk about the perks, the fireball being a tier 1 perk is honestly really insane. And her tier 2 perks to either get a second riot drill or make one riot drill way bigger are both really good, and they're both going to be good in almost every situation. So if you're a Mad Maggie main, she is really good in Season 20, and you definitely should play her in Ranked. Moving on to Mirage, it's going to be another B tier. And don't get me wrong, I know there is probably some really good Mirage mains out there, but anytime I play with a Mirage, they feel like they have very low impact in the fights, and it's just because of the utility that they have. Feels like it doesn't do that much. I know you can get a lot more decoys now, but the problem is, I still think there's just way better options, but I don't think Mirage is throwing by any means ranked, to be honest. Newcastle, I'm also going B tier. He's good. Newcastle is a pretty solid character, and I would say his perks are pretty good too. The problem is, Mad Maggie is actually pretty prevalent right now, and Mad Maggie does a lot against Newcastle. So really nothing wrong with Newcastle. Just know that if you're facing a Mad Maggie, you're going to have a really bad time because your shields are just going to constantly get hit by drills and you can't even play them. Moving on to Octane, it's going to be our first C tier. I honestly think he's just kind of useless. His utility is pretty much just worthless in the current state of Apex, which is a shame because I really want Octane to come back to meta. But I think his perks were pretty lackluster, and I think Octane at his base was just not really that good either. So can't really justify anyone using Octane if you're genuinely trying to climb. Moving on to Pathfinder, I'm gonna go maybe A. I don't think his perks are really that impactful. I'm just going A with Path because I feel like Legends with mobility are what really make your ranked experience better currently. And of course, Pathfinder's grapple and zipline are both really good mobility type of abilities. And Pathfinder's grapple and zipline are obviously both really good movement abilities. And I've been seeing a lot of them in ranked, and people running Path seem to be doing well. So I think if you run Path, you'll do just fine in ranked, and you'll really like that you have that grapple. Rampart now, I'm giving A tier. Maybe people are going to disagree with this one, but I think Rampart is so good in this meta. Because now you're fighting worse shields way more often than you were in the last season. I would say most commonly you're getting into fights with blue armor. So if you're playing behind one of the amped covers, you're killing people with blue armor very quickly. Not to mention, Rampart's perks are really good too in my eyes. I like that you can carry 80 ammo per stack if you go a right side perk. And also the 20% improved handling and speed up time with the Sheila is very noticeable, and you can honestly use Sheila mid-fight now without dying for it. Call me crazy, but I think putting Rampart in A tier is even kind of underrated. I could just be saying this though because I've been having a lot of fun on her and I've been playing Rampart and ranked almost every time. Moving on to Revenant, he is a character that I really wish would have gotten nerfed because I'm sick of fighting Revenants with Overshield and then getting Conduit queued and I'm fighting at raid boss. Revenant, without a doubt, S tier, probably the best legend in the game for ranked. You have a way to entry fights and you have a way to get out of them. Paired with a Conduit, you feel like you're unstoppable. And along with the armor changes of Season 20, where you fight worse armors way more often, Revenant's free 75 extra shield puts you so far above everybody else you're fighting just in terms of shield that his impact in Season 20 ranked is just, it's a lot to deal with. Kind of feels like people hate you if you play Revenant, but if you want to be cheesy and you want to gain RP, trust me, Revenant is a really good character. On to Seer. I'm giving Seer B. Seer is not bad. The only thing is, I feel like Bloodhound fills the same role as Seer, and Bloodhound is just way better for that wall hack type of legend. Seer is not a throw. I just think if you want a wall hack legend, you should play Bloodhound instead. Moving on to Velk. I am giving her A because her perks are putting Velk kind of more back to the way old Velk used to be, and old Velk was really good in the game. And with all the third partying and stuff going on in ranked, it's very nice to have her ult to get to a fight to third party or to get away from the mass amount of absolute chaos that is going on right now. So I think she's honestly pretty solid right now in the game. And you could even ignore her tactical and her passive, and just her ult alone I feel like actually makes her pretty good right now. Because remember, evacs can always be shot out. But now that charge rifle has been nerfed for a while, there is really no gun that can consistently kill Valkyrie out of her ult. So it is basically a better and more consistent evac tower. Moving on to Vantage, I'm giving her B. Because personally, I'm not trying to have a bias against Vantage. I just feel like her kit is not that good for ranked. But I will say she has Recon class passive, which being a Recon character alone is really insane. Because the info you get off Recon along with the 200 Evo to your armor is very important right now. So I feel like she kind of got lucky that she gets to be that class passive. But overall, I think she just doesn't really have any utility that helps you in endgame. And a lot of ranked games, at least in my experience, have been making it to endgame. So I don't think she should ever go any higher than B without any buffs. Moving on to Watson, I'm going B because I feel like she just doesn't really fit with how fast the ranked is playing right now. Your goal in ranked is to basically third party everything as fast as you can. And Watson is just by design not an aggressive legend pretty much at all. She really excels on defense, but there's basically no defense in ranked in Season 20. Now again, I don't think you're throwing if you're playing Watson. She's still definitely useful. But if you want to gain RP, especially once you get to the higher ranks, I think you're really going to start to struggle with how much he kind of lacks being aggressive. And last but not least, we have Wraith, and I'm going to go B just because I don't think she really changed at all. Wraith is just Wraith, you know, like you're basically playing her for a tiny hitbox and her movement feels good. And you have a somewhat get out of jail free card. Wraith is a good solo player, but she's not really the greatest team player in the way the current game plays out. And I think if you're playing ranked, you just have a lot better legends that could farm RP. But that's about it for this tier list. If you agree or disagree, you can leave it in the comments. I feel like this one is way more accurate than the last tier list I made at least. So hopefully everyone feels a little bit better about this one now that I made this after actually seeing the balance changes.